Well, hello there. Welcome to this edition of Thought for the Week. We're with Paul on one of his great apostolic adventures, and we've left Cyprus, where he'd been ministering, and we've now come to South Galatia. And here he has just gone up into the mountains to a place called Pisidian Antioch. This is in verse 14 of Acts chapter 13. And the whole thing concerns these two great apostles and a third man, a much younger man, a young man called John Mark. Now, he's important to us because of the second gospel: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And this young man was with Paul and Barnabas as they started out this apostolic adventure, the first of their great adventures. But sad to say, they came to a place called Perga, which was disease-ridden with malaria. And for whatever reason, John Mark chose to go home. He left Paul and Barnabas. Now, we don't altogether know why. There are possible reasons, which we'll look at in due course. But here was a young man who had come from Jerusalem with Paul and Barnabas. Barnabas was his cousin. That was obviously one of the reasons why Paul felt confident to take Mark along with them, because Barnabas was his cousin. They came together to Cyprus, but when they got to the mainland, John Mark left them. Now, who was this guy? He was a Jewish guy. We think he had a Greek father or a Roman father because he had two names. As we see here, he was known as John, which was his Hebrew name, but he was also known as Marcus, which was his Roman name. And many people in those days had two names, two identities almost, as Jews, but also as Roman citizens. And it looks as if Mark came from a family like that. His mother, we know, we come across her in Jerusalem, but we don't come across his dad. So it seems that by the time that we're introduced to Mark, to John Mark, his dad had died and he was living at home with his mother. There's a reference to their home together in Acts chapter 12 and verse 12. This is a fascinating story which we covered a little while ago. You remember when Peter was put into prison for preaching the gospel? He had a pretty torrid time, didn't he? Thrown into a dungeon and was released by a mighty angel of the Lord. It's a terrific story, and it's there in Acts chapter 12. But when the mighty angel sprang Peter from prison, Peter had to find a safe house. And he did so. In verse 12 of Acts 12, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. These were local Christians. So clearly, Mark's mother, whose name was Mary, had a church meeting in her house, the church in Jerusalem. So she was a significant woman. She had a largish house where Mark had been brought up to, and she was playing host to the local church in Jerusalem. And when Peter was sprung from prison, it was the natural place for him to go. And so he did. But my goodness me, when you're reading these things about imprisonment and secret homes where Christians could meet safely and all these things, they make you wonder, because there are those who believe, and I happen to be one of them, that we're going to be facing extremely tough times. Indeed, many of us are now. The tide has turned against the churches. Well, I'm not talking about organized religion. I'm talking about true discipleship, serving Jesus, living by the word of God. These are tough times, folks, and we're going to have to learn the truth about discipleship if we're going to stand. So it's my prayer that the Lord will bless you not least as we're studying the scriptures together, to encourage you, as I myself am constantly encouraged, reading about the examples of these mighty saints, not least the mother of John Mark and John Mark himself. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you until we're together again next time. Bye bye for now.